I hit it that time. Good job, man. There you go. On cue. There you go. He's getting there. Hello. Good morning. Yes. Woo. It's that time. That music means one thing. It's time to bridge civil tension. Of course, you're listening to 21.6 The Net. You're caught in the net. Bridging Civil Tension, the show where we feel it's better to build a bridge than to burn it down. Right? I love your introduction. That is it. So fired up. You can't tell me that doesn't feel good. Come on. It feels good. That's because I think I'm making progress. I don't know if we are, but I'm making progress. And that's all that matters. That's all that matters. Today on Bridging Civil Tension, equity versus equality. Come on. Equity versus equality. And we're back. Hey, Gary, thanks for hanging out, Gary. Glad to have you with us. Last show, absolutely fantastic meal. And it is good morning as well. Good day, mates. Good absolutely. And keep Ken off the gummy bears. Yes. Last week, let me help people out. So one of our sponsors for the grounds is Cannabis CBD shop. And so I enjoy CBD, but I don't like the THC in it, you know. Right. So like when I was a teenager and smoking a blunt. And last week we were talking and somebody's like, man, you have him speechless. Well, the sponsor had dropped off these gummies that are vegan Delta 8 THC gummies. I didn't know they were THC gummies. So I hit one during the grounds. You hit one? Yeah, I took one, during the grounds. And then about midway through our show last week, I did the pot. I was just sitting here and I was like, I don't even know what Phil's talking about. I'm trying to catch up because my brain is all foggy. Yeah. So they're like, somebody was like, ooh, this is the first time I've seen Kent speechless. And I had to stop and think what you had just asked me. So I was everywhere. Face. I'm not. I haven't taken. Yeah. I can't feel my face. Just bizarre. And then I'm like, Peter Griffin on the Family Guy. I'm having a conversation inside my head, like, hey man, you got to answer this question, otherwise people. Exactly. So it was. So if you want to see, it was a funny show. To me, I went back and watched it. I'm like, oh god, that's. I have to go back and watch that. I didn't know that you were blazed. Oh wow. Yeah, I didn't either until midway through the show, and I'm like, oh. Well, for those of you who aren't heathens, we will have a pot-free episode today. Thank you very much. I run a tight ship here. So what I wanted to do, and I talked about it last week, and I read a great article, and it really helped me out a lot. And I think that with a lot of the tensions, racial tensions in America, is that we get confused equity versus equality. And I think one side is talking about equity and the other side is trying to defend equality. Right. And they're two different things. And we talked a little bit about it in the green room. And I can read the definitions, which I think will truly help. But often race-focused conversations derail because people are using the same terms in different ways. One of the challenges of communicating effectively about race is to move people from the narrow and individualized definition of racism to a more comprehensive and systemic awareness, right? And that is what we've been trying to deal with here on this show. Is it's not personal, and sometimes we get frustrated as some of our listeners will get frustrated. We'll get frustrated because they want to make it very personal, right? And we're saying, move those binoculars out, get out from the microscope, and take a step back, bird's eye view. This is what we're addressing. So to illuminate racism, we really need to name it, frame it, and explain it. And I think that many people of our 800 some thousand listeners, thank you for tuning in every week and spending time with us. Absolutely. Is that I don't know if they have their own definition of racism. Like I said on our first show, I'm a white guy, and racism to me was that there's a superior race.
Right.
And that's yes, a definition of it. It's not necessarily what we are trying to talk about and bridge,
right?
If that makes sense, right? So it's important to establish a shared language as we do this. So what I wanted to do was cover equity versus equality. Now, equity is defined as the state, quality, or ideal of being just, impartial, and fair. I'll say it again. It's the state, quality, or ideal of being just, impartial, and fair. Okay. The concept of equity is synonymous with fairness and justice. It is helpful to think of equity as not simply a desired state of affairs or a lofty value. To achieve and sustain equity, it needs to be thought of as a structural or systemic concept.
And that was equity or equality?
That's equity.
Okay.
All right. So a lot of times I think one side is burning and yearning for equity,
right,
while the other side is taking it very personal and speaking equality.
Right.
So one of the examples that I was using in the green room was that I want it to be equal. Hey man, I fought hard. My parents dug deep. They pulled up their bootstraps, and they're self-made people.
Right.
Okay. So you can have the same thing. Yep. That's equality.
Right. Right.
Right. But now let me help you have the difference between equity and equality. Equity involves trying to understand and give people what they need to enjoy a full, healthy life. Equality, in contrast, aims to ensure that everyone gets the same things in order to enjoy full, healthy lives. Like equity, equality aims to promote fairness and justice, but it can only work if everyone starts from the same place and needs the same things.
Right.
Okay? So that part of equality is what a lot of people try to defend. Hey man, you have all the same, you can do the same thing. You just got to work hard. You got to do it. That's what I did. I worked hard. Right. Okay. That's equality, but we didn't start at the same spot.
Right.
Right. I started out in the suburbs. You may not have. Right. You started out in the suburbs. I may have started out in the country. Right. And so there's some different, that's not equal. Equal is take a look at the Olympics. They all start at the same starting point. That's equality.
Right.
We each have to run 100 yards, and we all start at the same. I'm not running 100 and you're running 120 for the 100-yard dash.
Right.
But in life, that's kind of what it's been. Right?
You got sprint, I got hurdles.
Yeah, right. or the steeplechase. Yeah, there's big water puddles, everything. So I think a lot of the frustration that there is here in America, especially maybe worldwide, I don't know, I can only speak for America, Phil, is that one side is thinking equality, the other is saying equity. And so when you hear the word systemic, instead of racism, put equity in there.
Right.
And is it fair across the boards?
The example that my mind goes to first is as far as like the school system, right?
Yeah.
And they'll talk about how certain school systems, like the availability for like laptops and things like that, aren't as available for the students. They don't have 5 computers at home. Everybody's got their own laptop or iPad. So the quality is you guys got homework. Chris Lake South has homework. Westinghouse has homework. Yep. Difference is Chris Lake South doesn't have to take 2 buses to get to the library to do their homework, where the Westinghouse kids do have to take a bus or 2 to get to the library to do their homework.
Well, let's not even talk travel. We'll stay in the same realm. we all know that school districts are based on test scores. Right. Okay. So out here, Crystal Lake, you're on a campus that has many acres. Maybe some traffic, but you're not going to hear that inside. And so when I go to take that test, perhaps it's relatively quiet. It's a good testing environment. However, if we go down to like Emmett Till Academy, where there's gunshots, sirens, screaming, yelling going on, and you have to have the windows open because there's no air conditioning, that's a different test scenario, perhaps. Right. And is a few more distractions. So maybe I won't have the same opportunity to get a good test score.
I mean, the verbiage on the tests,
right?
We'll have certain situations where they'll allow the test form to be in the language of certain demographics, whether it's Hispanic, Polish, things of that nature. Kids from Westinghouse don't have the same vernacular as people,
Correct.
As far as words that you're hearing more frequently. So for some of these situations, some of these tests, nobody that I see on a day-to-day basis talks like this.
Right.
So which is the correct way? This is what I hear most often.
Right. I mean, when I was going to school, it was John went to the store to pick up 2 apples. Sally then bought 2 apples from John. Right. And now, to be inclusive, we say Juan.
Right. But
right.
Tommy was cooking 3 brats. How do you cook brats?
Yeah. Why are you cooking brats?
So I moved to Illinois. I know it's brats.
Yeah. That's still sometimes I get it confused. But right. So. Right. So yeah, so there is that. Now, what equity would be is that it's not the same test. That's equality.
Right.
Hey, here's the Iowa Test of Basic Skills. Boom. And we're going to send it to everybody. Okay. But not everybody knows what a brat is, or a brat, right? And so it's interesting. So really, if we wanted equity, each test will be designed for that specific area,
right.
or region,
right.
And ethnicity, to be honest, right? And some of you are going to say, well, that's not fair. Well, sure it is. Why isn't it? But again, it's not equal. We didn't start at the same spots.
I mean, the amount of test prep that's available at this school versus that school, SAT, ACT, test prep, right. All the courses that are offered here that may not be offered at some of these schools allow that higher test score.
Right. So it's very important that when we're doing these things, and let's go back a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about the young lady from Britain, and the swim cap. Right. Which, by the way, we had our first African American win a medal in swimming this past week. So there you go. Right. But she didn't have that weird cap on. Didn't have as much hair either. But anyway, but again, that fight.
Here, there's hope.
Yeah. So that fight then was about equality. We have to be equal. Well, but the equity says, I have a different hair structure.
Right.
And for me to put it in here without shaving my head as a woman, not many women want to have shaved heads, is that's an important thing.
Right.
And so some people had mentioned and got upset about, because we were looking at equality. It's got to be equal for everybody. No, it should be equitable.
Right.
And
if she could still win despite the drag, then
right. What's the problem? Yeah. So I think that an eye opener for me is taking a look at systemic equity, and it hasn't been the same equity. And people haven't had the same chances because they haven't started in the same place, right? Yes. Hey, absolutely. Back in the early 1900s, when we had all these immigrants coming over to Ellis Island, and you were coming to New America to make your way, at that point, everybody that's like your starting point. Everybody was kind of there, the immigrants coming in to make the American dream. So they got this start here. However, there were several people already in America who didn't get offered that same opportunity.
Right.
but maybe have been here for generations.
Right.
And so the interesting thing is, hey, my grandfather came over. And mine did. Mine stowed away. Good morning. It's Friends Day, National Friends Day. Well, thanks, Tim.
Friends Day, brother.
That's it. So my grandfather stowed away on a ship, come over here with his brother, and then he built 3 grocery stores in the Lansing, Michigan area. That's amazing, right? And I can say, well, your family's been here for centuries, Phil. Right. I mean, seriously, you actually had it better than my grandfather stowing away on a boat. But did we?
I mean, and you hear that argument, and then it's funny when people say things like that because they don't acknowledge the aspect of like redlining.
Right.
They don't acknowledge that there may have been people who allowed the loan for the commercial building for your grandfather so he can build the 3 supermarkets or grocery stores in order to then have that success story. Where that is a known historical thing that's a part of our country. Mm-hmm. So you take that and you deprive people of that opportunity to do so. There are lots of people, and not just African American, but other cultures who would have loved to do that.
Yeah.
But discrimination would not allow them to get that same position. So then should they be ridiculed for not being able to accomplish as much as others who did? They didn't have that obstacle.
Right.
I just don't feel that there is equality without the equity side, without the understanding of, hey, listen, we have done this to offset, right, to set these people back, mm-hmm. to do this against this demographic. We're going to have to counter what we did in order to get things to an equal playing field.
Or that starting point.
Right. Starting point.
Absolutely. And Gary says, if the early immigrants all had the same chances and some don't take them or waste them, is there a case to be put the responsibility on the society or the government? Yeah. Right. I mean, America is the land of the free, right? So you have your choices to do that. But if we all started if we all started the 100-meter race at the same starting point, and I choose to wait 3 seconds before I start running, that's on me. That's not on the rules or the people who have laid the rules down. Right. However, when again we'll go back to the 100-meter dash, that when I'm at the starting line and I make Phil run the 120.
Right.
That's different.
It's a whole different race.
It's a different race. He'll still probably beat me. Don't get me wrong. He'll still probably beat me.
I think you give me a run with my leg right now. You definitely.
Oh, maybe.
But like Ken saying, I think that there's a difference just between ambition and what was implemented as far as systemically, right?
Yeah.
Like you're saying, if you decide to wait 3 seconds before you take off, that's on you. If I decided to not apply for this loan or apply for this grant or try to take this opportunity, if I just chose not to on my own, then that's on me. I have no one that I can complain about. But if you're seeing historically where this was denied or this was not granted access to or promotions are less likely if you look like blank, then that's a situation where it is a society thing, or it might be a governmental thing as far as things that need to be changed or things that need to be looked deeper into in order to make sure that, hey, listen, although we said you're not supposed to this anymore, we're still finding that this is happening. Yeah. How do we audit this? How do we make sure that this is not the case anymore? Because we're still finding people who are upset or making accusations, but saying this is the reason why we did not get this. How can we dive deeper into this versus just continue to ignore them like the problem's not still happening?
Right. And I think that a lot of it is too personalized. This right, and that's what we kind of talked about is you've got to really get out of the microscope and widen your lens, widen your view. And I think that the people who get really upset about it when we talk about racial issues, I think the people who get really tormented with it and torn apart and angry is you're taking it very personally, right? And we shouldn't. Right. I mean, we can take a look at when I go back to the 60s, all we were doing was walking across the bridge and they got power hoses out. All right. You just shouldn't treat people that way. Right. if it's violent and we're throwing bricks and have guns and things, okay, tear gas, things like that, I understand, crowd control, whatever the case may be. But how do we treat humans?
Right. What's the basic standard?
Yeah, and at that point, how we treat humans here in America the equity isn't necessarily there, and that's what we're trying to bridge, is to say, how do we get that equity, right? How do we make sure that
right.
we have it? And that's a good question. And if anybody knows, let me know. I mean, then the show's over. We'll have to create a new one.
That's fine. I think we're both creative enough.
Yeah.
So how do we get people to take a step back then to look past, this is my specific story, this is what I know, but if I'm hearing this on such a grand scale, you guys can't all be making this up, because from West Coast to East Coast, North to South, it seems to be similar stories. How do I look past, well, me as Kent Jones in Crystal Lake area or Woodstock area, never experienced racism? Probably may not have.
True.
Because the numbers play in your favor. However, if there's minorities in the area, then you talk to most of them. And the ones that you spoke to all seem to have a similar experience in the area. How do we look past I haven't, so it doesn't exist, into, hey, maybe there's something here?
Well, that's yeah. So let's see. Gary says, so could the current U.S. societal challenges actually be a conflation of these situations from the time it began to now?
The narrative is so jumbled, and people take it as a convenient excuse to blame everything and anything.
That's a good point. Right now, and that comes from both sides. If we want to talk equitable, it really comes from both sides. Hey, you've got all the same. You're this America. You have all the same rights as I do, Phil. So I'm blaming you, right? When listen, growing up, I didn't listen. I'm putting it out there. You can mark it down here. It was hard for me to accept that I was short and white when I played basketball. It was hard, right? And I didn't think it was fair that I wasn't 6'6" and African American.
Can't imagine.
Right?
You don't know pain on that level.
Yeah, right. You don't, Phil. Right? Because that's my dream as a kid was to play in the NBA. I mean, I wanted to be Magic Johnson. I wanted to be him, right? Which I still follow on Twitter. Anyway, who's a brilliant businessman. Now I follow him because he's just a brilliant businessman. But anyway, so that was hard for me to accept. But I would blame my parents for being white. I got the right last name. Jones is there, right?
Right. You were close. You were close.
Close. So close. Bald, right?
Any minute now.
Anyway. I won't Jimmy Kimmel though. So
you can be Magic Mike.
Yeah. I don't think there's anything magic about Kent. That's all right.
Sorry.
Hey. So the narrative is so jumbled. Is it there, right? So actually, to be a conflation of these situations from time it began now, yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like, there's a mix of people who didn't have that ambition, didn't go for it.
Yeah,
I think I don't want it to dilute or take away from the fact of, like, it's documented of how many people have tried though to be ambitious. Though.
Sure.
And to just say, well, there's these guys too. Look over here while this is still happening, right?
Well, let's I'll go back, right? Thanks, Nate. I'll go back to Juneteenth, okay, and we'll go back there the Emancipation Proclamation, and it took 6 months or so for everybody to be free, quote unquote. But at the same time, if we were equitable, they would have been free. But what happened was we wanted to keep that unequal. We didn't want to be equality driven. So here's what happened. Many laws were passed. You can't read? Well, you're in jail.
You're in jail.
Oh, you don't have a job? You're in jail, right?
No home.
You're in jail.
We freed you.
Correct.
Where you were. And now that you're walking to the north to be away from this,
you're in jail. Right. So we've created this monster, and I think that you have to take a look at the societal challenges of how it all went down.
Can we take that a step further, though?
Yeah.
Okay. So when that happened, though, also slave masters and plantation owners were given reparations. The same thing that a lot of people are against now.
Yeah.
Lo and behold.
Oh, hey, you lost your workforce. There you go.
Lo and behold, people received it. Certain people received it. Anyway, so we're going to give this group reparations to make sure that, because of loss of workforce, they're taken care of. We're going to arrest this group and give them no sort of reparations. That right there gives you a 50-yard head start.
Right.
Because now you're able to acquire more land and you're able to buy more buildings. You're able to open more stores and things like that, which is going to stay into your family for generations, while this one now has to check that box for the rest of their life.
And Nate, you shouldn't be. If you're working, you shouldn't be watching this. Get off your phone. All right. Yes. So what we said was we all got the 100-yard dash. However, you're going to start 50 yards back. Now you're running 200, right? All right. Equality, the state of being equal, especially in status, rights, and opportunities, versus equity, the quality of being fair and impartial. Personally, if I were forced to make a choice, I'd choose equality every time. That's just me. Being fair and impartial. So you don't like being fair and impartial, Pete? Is that what you would rather have equal status, rights, and opportunities? Let me ask you a question. In America, doesn't everybody have that? The same status and rights and opportunities? That's where we start talking about this, right? And when when we take a look at that, and that's why I said at the beginning of the show, that's why I put out there. Here's what equity is defined as the state, quality, or ideal of being just, impartial, and fair. The concept of equity is synonymous with fairness and justice. It is helpful to think of equity as not simply a desired state of affairs or a lofty value, where equality, as we stated, is in order for equality to work and have that equality, as you would take equality every time, is we all have to start in the same place. Right? We can all run the race, but if I have to start 50 yards behind in that race, how equal is that race? Right? Let's see. It's the equality of opportunities versus the equity of outcomes is a good way to put it. Right? That's a good way to put it. And he says, I agree with Pete. I would be biased on the equality of opportunities.
Okay, so my question to both Pete
and Gary,
sorry, is I don't want you guys to confuse the equality of the theory of opportunities. Right, because if I could have it says I have the opportunity to, let's say, going back to redlining, I have the opportunity to apply for this commercial building. But if the truth is, because of my skin color, there's going to be redlining against my opportunity to own that building, then the opportunity really isn't there for me. I have the opportunity to be free if I'm a slave. I have the opportunity to be free, sure. Yeah, but if I'm arrested on my walk away from the plantation, I didn't really have that opportunity for freedom.
It wasn't equal.
I don't think that you can have equality without the equity side. And I think we get so caught up on the theory of, we've talked so much about the American dream is just that, a dream versus actually the American reality. It's cool that, all men are created equal and, freedom and justice for all, until you can't sit in this section. In theory, we had the opportunity to all be free, but only some of us were allowed inside this area of this diner.
Mm-hmm.
So we get so caught up in the theory of the opportunities that we give people versus the reality of not everybody has the same set of rights or opportunities or everything that you guys listed. So I don't think that part's available without the equity side.
For example, and let's just see. And Gary says, in that case, it becomes a chicken egg dogma, which came first, equality or equity, and it does. But take a look at this, and we talked about this in
come first is equity.
Yeah,
if you're going to have equality.
You're correct. And we talked about this in the green room. Is take, for example, communities with a sizable portion of incarcerated residents.
Right.
Okay, these neighborhoods, these communities are economically burdened, and consequently, all right, lack resources to support families appropriately. Okay, and in America, I can only speak about America because I haven't gone outside of America. In America, you have you could point out which communities those are easily, right? And as I would say to my daughter, well, it's a big country. Move, get out of that. And some people can't. They don't have the means to. Their families there, whatever, right? It's not as easy as you can, but that is so. If you have one community that has a sizable portion of its community incarcerated, they're not going to get the same equal opportunities that a community that doesn't have a high rate of incarceration. So it could be the chicken, it could be the egg, yes. But here's what I'm saying, and thank you for proving my point, some of you out there, is some of us battle for equality when the conversation may be about equity. And we have trouble bridging that. Yeah. Right? You like how I threw that in? Bridging?
Ew.
We have trouble bridging and understanding and listening to go, wait, Phil, you're actually talking about equity.
So my question, and we've talked about this before.
Yeah.
Let's say hypothetically there's just as many drugs as Woodstock as Westinghouse. Hypothetically, of course. But Westinghouse has the metal detectors and the police who are there constantly 24/7 searching every backpack. But they don't search the Woodstock kids for whatever reason at the same rate that they search the Westinghouse kids. I feel that then it would be wrong to say, well, Westinghouse has so many drugs in their possession at their school. Well, they're not searching them at the same rate.
Correct.
They're not investigating them. They're not arrested at 3 times the rate or 4 times the rate of these kids over here. So how can we say that this is just so awful versus we're not spending the same amount of energy to find out if this is even happening?
Which at that point I like what Pete says here. Right? Where'd it go?
That was.
I don't know where he went.
I think Pete responded.
Oh yeah, he might have pulled it. Okay. He had put up there. In that case, we could go into why are the people in that community incarcerated?
That's Bree.
Right. Oh, that's Bree. Who said that?
Coach Bree.
Oh, where is that? Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay, Bree. I thought it was Pete. I don't know why I thought it was Pete. And then we can go to why the people in said community are being incarcerated. Right. Yeah, he must be. Yeah. Sorry about that, Bree. I don't know why I thought it was Pete. Anyway, I guess maybe I took one of these gummies again today. I have no idea what's going on.
Easy Puff Daddy.
Wow. So here's the deal, though. Take a look at the number of overdoses, and they're going to be higher in those kids out here in the suburbs. Okay. And not as high as in where they're being incarcerated more often. Okay. And here's the other reason is I'm going to a private school, and Daddy knows several attorneys, and you arrested me because I had methamphetamines. How's that for a 1980s term? Or a little heroin or something like that in my possession at school. And so where one person gets suspended, the other gets put in jail.
Right. There's
or detention. Maybe.
There's a school.
We gotta oil these chairs. They're really squeaky.
Yeah, I was like, it's like Trillville in here. Yeah. Anyway, There's a school in our area that is supposed to be a high, I don't want to say Catholic school. They're red and light blue, and it's known as the drug school in the area.
Yeah.
It's the school in the area. You know what I'm talking about?
Right.
It's the
like a
It's the school that when kids say I went there, they tried several.
And there's another one.
Oh yeah, there's
on a ridge.
They're on a ridge. Yeah, because they got the money to get it on that ridge.
That's right.
But on this one particular, it's known.
Yeah.
That it's just overflowing. Yet, never do you hear about constantly searches, seizures at all.
Never.
How is that?
Yeah.
And like you just said, because this person's going to get 3 days suspension.
Yeah.
This one's going to jail.
Yeah. So when you fight for equality and enforce the theory of equality under which our U.S. society is purported to live via constitutional legislation, the fight for equity falls in line with the equality afforded. Equity always, with no exceptions, comes secondary to equality always.
Pete, I think you understand, bro. We've had equality verbiage since the country was founded.
Yeah.
We're still having an equity discussion today. So if it fell in line like you're saying it does, we wouldn't be here right now having this conversation. We've talked about equality. That's how the country was founded, and they have the legislation and they have the verbiage and they'll sign this and do that. However, the reality of the situation is we still have to have this conversation today.
Yeah. To which Gary says, "Hey, here in Singapore, we tend to remove drugs and guns through the death penalty, so that these do not provide an excuse for non-equity. That'll do it." Hey, Jim, sorry, we found a joint in your daughter's backpack. Her death sentence is Thursday. What?
Break, buddy.
You what? All right, so that's why we have CRT. Yes, critical race theory. But again, very hot topic. We talked about it. It's been around since the 90s, folks. But let's just get upset about it today. I grew up in Waukegan, and it wasn't exactly hard to find or get hands on drugs. When I moved to Wonder Lake and started hanging out in Woodstock, it was very easy to get hands on drugs with no fear of getting in trouble. Just my experience in Waukegan, everyone was always getting in trouble for everything, but no one ever gets in trouble in Woodstock if you compared the two towns.
Exactly.
Now, we don't necessarily want to, and we'll just say those are hypothetical towns.
Hypothetical.
So all the listeners in the real Waukegan and real Woodstock, we absolutely love you. Thanks for tuning in to 21.6 The Net.
We love you guys.
That's it. Exactly to the point, right? Is where's that equity base? Where's that, right? And again, the fairness, as equity would be, the fairness. Where's that fairness? Again, we're running a race in the Olympics. Everybody starts in the same starting spot.
You hear about these, kids who, like you said, in this city who get arrested for fighting, for not complying, for drugs and things of that nature. Yeah. I watched kids hit a teacher in the face with a folder, push back security guard, all sorts of stuff that in this school they would have been arrested for it. But like you said, they got a 3-day suspension.
Or a detention.
And then that was a slap on the hand, slap on the wrist, whatever. But these ones have to check that box for the rest of their life. Both have equal opportunities. But the consequences are significantly different.
Right. And that's why I think that this is a very huge and important, right? It is. It's always people who would never have unfair equality or equity experience that they say there is no issue. There's a lot to that, right? There is a lot to that.
Tim, I love you.
And that's what I say. I think that's why there's so much passion, perhaps, right? I've never experienced. You're a damn liar, Phil. What?
Well, I've never.
Right?
Do I know? I'm not think I know Nate.
No.
Right.
No.
Hi, Nate. But by the way,
that's it.
But a person who
I don't know if anybody really knows Nate.
Prepped to say that from a completely different says the same exact thing.
Yeah.
At what point do we get to where it's like, hey, Phil's making this stuff up? Maybe there's something.
Not just Phil.
Well, I'm saying because we're on the show or whatever, but it just seems like when there's conversations and people will talk to this person in their community or on Facebook or in the comment section. It's it can't be the truth.
Yeah. So let's roll back to the the man who's on the $1 bill. Okay. And on the American $1 bill, it's going to be George Washington.
America.
Or as some people call him, George Washington.
Washington.
Depends where you come from.
Closer in the bush.
So here's the deal. You would rather have equality. Equality meant that at the 5.5 month mark, you took all of your free servants down to the South so that the 6 month ticker started over. Because if you lived in Virginia for 6 months as an African American,
should have been,
you would be considered free. However, it is duly noted in history, that says that the first president of the United States would then take his quote unquote free servants down to the southern, just past the Mason-Dixon line or whatever was the line, for a few weeks, because then your 6 months started over. That is not very equal, is it? I mean, it wasn't like, hey, everybody, it's time for our 5.5 month vacation. Let's
24 hours. Go with your boy. We're going.
Hop in.
Where are we going? To the South.
We're going to head down south. Right. Yeah. With a total of 179 schools here, we can't fathom how it's like to have an armed security guard in school, because there is zero. Yeah. Hey, that's every school now. Right. That's every school now. Absolutely. If I got what someone else worked for simply because it was fair due to equity, that's privilege, not equality. And then that gain out of simple. Yep. Okay.
Where do we say give someone else what you worked for, though? That's not even in the conversation.
No, he's saying simply because it's fair.
But that's not the conversation right now. We're not saying everybody gets
right
because you work for that. That's two different topics.
Correct.
We're just saying that I should be able to work and get the same amount that you worked for. If I get the same line of work, I should get the same thing. I should have the same opportunity. If you apply and I apply and my credit looks like your credit, I should get the same thing. If you got to do homework after school and I got to do homework after school, your kids' process of doing so should look just like mine. And it shouldn't be that this one has to take 3 buses and this one has more opportunities and more access to resources. That's where I'm saying I don't want yours.
Right. And again, theirs is, right? Equity involves trying to understand and give people what they need to enjoy full, healthy lives.
Right.
Equality, in contrast, aims to ensure that everyone gets the same things in order to enjoy the full, healthy lives. And that's what you're saying there is due to equity. No, that would be due to equality, right, that you're trying to do that, right? Not equality.
And that gain out of simple fairness.
Absolute becomes inequitable. Life is not fair. Equality means we are able to live the best of our skills and abilities applied to our opportunities. Supporting people beyond what their skills and abilities enable them to do then becomes philanthropic support. It's one of the reasons we have so very many nonprofit organizations. Right. But again, I think the way I'm reading it right there, I'm reading that as equity and equality. The confusion again.
Right.
Equity is not saying it's a socialism. That's not equity. That's not equity. Equity says that you have the same opportunities no matter where you start. Equality is saying we all started at the same level in the same place, right? And that's not the case.
Right. So, I mean, in addressing both of these, Pete's and Gary's, it says referring to the reparations that was slightly mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
In the same breath, no. Because at no point in this conversation did I say I wanted a handout. I said that other people were given those reparations that you're now trying to be sarcastic about, which gave them a head start. What I'm saying is let's acknowledge that part. So now from here, I don't want what's Pete's. I don't want a handout. I just want that when I stay in my lane and I work just as hard as Kent or as Pete, I don't have more obstacles on my path. That's all I'm saying. That's it. I don't want a handout. I don't want a reparation. I just want to have the same type of lane if we're all running a 100-yard dash. I don't want anything philanthropical. I don't want you to feel like you have to create something just because of my skin. I just want that if I apply for the loan or if I apply for a job or I just apply myself in any endeavor, I do not have more obstacles, and obstacles that you don't have, I shouldn't have them either. That's it.
That's it. Thanks, Tim. We really try to bridge the tension. But for the record, I bought all my drugs from Caucasians. All the black drug dealers ended up in jail, group homes, or juvenile detention centers. Just kidding. Dear worked for me, he says. Phil, you and I agree. No sarcasm has been offered on my part. I agree with what you're saying 100%. However, equity is currently being sold as a gift out of fairness. Right. And that's what we don't want it to be. Equity means you bust your butt to get it. But you, again, it's the 100-yard dash. It's not me sprinting the 100-yard dash and Phil having to do it on stilts over hurdles. That's what we're saying. Right.
Explain, Pete, please go explain the gift out of fairness.
Yeah. So the gift. So I think what he's referring to is, and I may be putting my foot in your mouth, Pete, but is the people who are African American or people of color now are saying, hey, we need reparations for being slaves all those 100 years ago. We need something free.
Right.
I would. That's the way I'm reading it. I may be wrong because it's fair. I listen. And if that's the case, I'm going to be like, you show me the bloodline where your ancestor was a slave, and I'll think about it. And if you come in and be like, oh, wait a minute, you're actually from Wales? And your parents came over here in 1938? Yeah, nothing for you.
Dublin, actually.
Dublin. Right. Nothing for you.
You're close.
No soup for you.
I think, maybe if I'm reading wrong, however, equity is currently being sold as a gift out of fairness. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think that if that has to be the case, then I think that also goes back to because it wasn't a standard on the equality promise. That the equality promise wasn't delivering what it was said to deliver, and so now we have to do something on the back end to get this equity stuff out the way. But that just goes back to just the theory of equality is not working.
All going back to the Constitution, all men are created equal. That's true. That's 100% true. However, they're not born into the same equity position, right? Because all men, all women, born equal. You're pooped out and you're a baby, and you have to depend on somebody to live. That's the deal. So when you get pooped out, we are all created equal. We're all created very much in the same way. I don't know if anybody's being created in petri dishes now. I'm just saying that we're all created in the same way. Right. We're all created equal. However, well, it's the bat phone. However,
I was calling in.
That's right.
You were live with 21 seconds.
That's it. However, I think that we're not all born into the same equity position. That's all. Right.
Who am I on the phone with? I can't.
Yeah. So Nate says, I worked for a place that offered a loan for only black business owners and offered them a business loan at a lower interest rate and lower credit qualifications for the loan. Just curious if anyone else considered this a type of hangout, since it's not exactly equal for everyone. Maybe a hang-up. Or handout, man.
Probably
okay.
Handout.
Okay, type of handout, since it's not exactly equal for everyone and always had a way of discrimination. So there's a bank, a big bank out of Canada.
Right.
Canada.
Hey.
I don't know. Anyway.
Who are they, mate?
Yeah, that's it. And this bank created a product for small business owners who were African American, right? And that's what he's saying. Wait a minute, how is that fair? Because if he wanted to get that same loan, he wouldn't have been able to.
Right. I'm listening.
Is that equal, or is that not the same equity?
Hold on. I'm with you.
Pete says,
hold on. Let's say this one.
Okay.
So I don't know if it's going to be backwards. So where is it?
Is it up there?
It's a timeline, right?
Oh yeah, that's good.
And so what we're saying now is that we don't like, for this amount of the timeline, blacks were segregated against or discriminated against, and for this entire timeline, they weren't allowed to get this loan. But now what we're going to say is, because of this amount of time since we had to create this, this is not fair, but this is cool. I think we need to look at things.
You could be a hand model. It's just wonderful.
You see those cuticles? Goodness. Anyway, I don't like to brag, but not. But I think we can't ignore the entire timeline. And I think that we also have to be honest about the fact that the only reason why that loan or that system was implemented was because it was known for such a long time. If you're a black business owner, you're most likely not going to get. Those are beautiful too. Not going to get.
No, I'm just saying banks would not have a need for special loans if there wasn't a problem to begin with. So that's what.
Tim from downtown. He's heating up.
He's batting 1,000.
He's on fire.
Pete says, really, I don't give a left nut what color you are.
What about a right?
Maybe, but not the left. When I'm being told that equity means someone gets something out of fairness just because they haven't worked for it themselves, I'm not okay with that. And I don't think that's not worth saying what the definition of equity is.
Hey, scroll up. Where do you see that?
No, that's what he's saying. He's hearing.
From who? That's
in the main
conversation. That's not the conversation that just because a person has worked. Today's literal conversation has been, if I work just as hard as, not give me a handout, not be philanthropist, not reparations, that if I work just as hard. He started the conversation off responding to Gary, saying that if a person chose not to work, then that's on them. But there's been documentation of hundreds of thousands of people who have tried to work and are attempting to work and are looking to bust their behind to get to a equal position in life, and they're not allowed to do so for whatever reason we want to call it. So we're saying for those who choose to work, not give a handout because of skin. Right.
So when we create a lending program such as that, what we're trying to do is, obviously some auditors and compliance people came in and go, doesn't look like you have a lot of minority loans going on here.
Right.
So they sit up in their ivory tower and go, oh crap, we better do this. Right.
And then at the same time, if we're going to be realistic about the situation, and I'm saying this with love, Nate, you worked at a bank. If you know that,
he's worked at several.
No, I'm saying, but it worked for that one. It was a bank that had that program. But if you know on the flip side of that all the other banks have the other system implemented, I don't get that loan. I think that a bank should be allowed if we're on the inside scoop that the rest of the banks have that other system going for them, where I don't get that loan or no one that looks like me gets that loan.
Yeah. And Pete, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with the, something out of fairness just because they haven't worked for it. And but that's not the definition of equity that we're playing with here. And that's what we're trying to say is, there are narratives out there that will try to spin that. There are organizations out there that will try to spin that and talk about equity. The equity that we're talking about is we don't want to hand out, but we don't want to have to run this on stilts and over hurdles because it's a dash, right? Phil Kent, not about the conversation you're having right now, but overall in the public metasphere, that's what equity is being sold as. Phil is a brilliant man who's worked hard for everything he's achieved. Tim Santos is a brilliant man who's built in an incredible life over himself and his family. Kent works incredibly hard for everything he wants to build. Scott Giles works amazingly hard for the life he wants to live. To me, you're all remarkable examples of what equality affords. Okay. First of all, I'm going to take issue with that because all of a sudden the two brown people were brilliant and I just work hard. Thanks, Pete.
I just know
Pete. Jeez.
Okay.
No, and I appreciate that.
The public media sphere controlled by who? Because
the left.
If we can continue to Candace Owens the whole conversation and take things and spin it to something that's not even part of the conversation, then it's going to work. Then when someone says, I just want to be able to work just as hard as Kent and be able to get just as much as Kent and not have more obstacles than Kent, it's easy to Candace Owens the whole thing and say, well, we're not giving handouts. We're not saying that. That's what's being sold to people who already have that fear to begin with. because if you already have that predisposition to feel that they just want handouts, when you hear that verbiage, this means this. Equity means hand. No, it doesn't. It just means don't put more obstacles in my path, and I'll bust my behind to go get it.
Right.
So be very, very careful who you're hearing, that all of them just want a handout, because we don't. We just don't want to have more obstacles to get where we're trying to get to.
Right. And I think if we really want to be fair and equitable, right, we have to understand that we haven't been fair and equalitable. Because, and again, that we have to assume equality comes when we all start from the same place. And we don't all start from the same place. But listen, we've all heard, we've seen, right? The rags to riches stories in sports, in business. Hey, Bill Gates started his company in a garage. He was, a goofy kid, and now he's, a trillionaire or whatever he is, right? He's got a lot of money anyway. Jeez, he says, Kent, geez, you're brilliant too. He says, Phil, absolutely agree with you on that. And Tim says, Pete, what about the right nut? It's not equal to the left one. I think you should treat your nuts with equality. That is the absolute quote.
We love our viewers.
That is going on the mustache now, right there. It is absolutely. Pete, what about the left nut? It's not equal to the left one. Right? That's it. That's it. So that's what we're saying is, go ahead, bust your butt, but understand that we didn't all start in the same place. And even though we didn't start in the same place, I may have a further race to run, but I don't need more obstacles in it. And that's equity. That's equity, right? One bank I did work for had a manager from Pakistan, and he would always discriminate for whatever reason against a certain type of color, and would get upset with me when I told him it doesn't matter what color he is as long as he qualifies. He would always tell me it's a high risk, and I would ignore him and treat him as equal. Yeah, that's weird, and that guy should be fired. So I've watched it go both ways. Corporations seem to pick a side instead of staying equal. Well, no, again, it's that timeline. You got to go back to that timeline. Is it equal today in our eyes? And that's, again, why I say we have to really peel our own lenses to a wider stance, right, on this. Go ahead.
So if you knew that you worked for banks that discriminated against certain groups of people, why the first post? It's if you know that, well, because I've seen it go.
No, I think he was just asking. I think he was more curious.
Okay.
Yeah. I know Nate pretty well.
Yeah,
so
I'm just like, if I know that I've seen this makes sense.
Yeah.
They have to, because if this is not created, this will not take care of it. Using my this is a family show, people.
It's
this is a family show, people. My mama watching this show right now. Come on, y'all don't get me in trouble.
He must lean left. Never mind.
Oh my gosh.
Oh Lord. Swing low.
I'm only a hand model, but Pete. They're nuts about him. Anyway.
Ta-da! Literally. That is about as equitable as you can get. All right. Oh my gosh. All right. For balance. It's for balance, of course. Yeah. Lil. This show has it all. Gummy bears, nuts, absolutely. LOL. And that's what we're doing. We're bridging that civil tension. Y'all are laughing. We're having a good time. We are on that back side of this. Man, this flew by again this morning. But you know what? And here's what I appreciate the most. I appreciate all these interactions. I appreciate these comments. I appreciate the 800-some-thousand listeners that we have every week, because without you, we would just be talking to ourselves. But in all fairness, this is a great conversation that I think we have to, as people, look at on a broader scale and really understand that a lot of what's being talked about is equity, and a lot of what we are getting upset about is equality.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Nate, to answer your question, I think it is for balance as far as having to have something implemented, since the other side's not going to necessarily do it on their own.
Yeah.
But like you're saying, I love the fact that me and Pete can go back and forth. I absolutely love you, brother. That like this healthy dialogue, making it fun, making it light. That's what's needed more of. That's why we have the show. We appreciate Hyperstitch, the shirt. We appreciate all you guys viewing in every Friday. I'm Phil Wallace. This is Kent Jones, bridging civil tension, and we have the funniest viewers.
We are the best. For all of us here, stick around. Right now is the Success Journey podcast.
Our message from us to you this weekend: go nuts.